Good afternoon. Welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. This is an episode on the softer side of sand carving. In case you haven't seen any of our earlier videos, I'm Laura Mann. I'm back and I'm manning the station once more with Dr. Finegrit. He's asked me here today to talk to you about the softer side of sand carving. And by that, I mean the design side of carving some pieces, as well as showing off a few interior design type of pieces that you can carve and use for many holiday seasons and just gatherings to come. And I hope you enjoy the show. And here we go. Today we're going to be focusing on this lovely pie plate in this teal color. And I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to design the artwork to get the best out of your carve and to make a really unique item. Now, as you can see, glass comes in many shapes, many sizes, all kinds of interesting things you can do with it. But that also means, from a design perspective, you have a lot of things to think about and factor into your design even before you start thinking about carving your piece. In the case of this cake plate, pie plate, whatever you want to put on it, one thing to consider is that it does have food placed on it. Now, when you carve something, it roughs the glass up. You can't feel it to the touch. But you want to make sure that if you're going to be washing that item, that it's easily washable and if you're going to put food on it. And so in the case of this plate, I've decided to place my design on the back of it. That is what I'm going to show you today. Now, some of the things that you might want to have on hand when working on your designs, especially when you have the substrate available, are measurement tools. What I really enjoy having on hand, though, are these flexible tape measures. They're very small, can go anywhere, and can easily wrap around a piece to tell you exactly how big you need your design to be. In this case, I've taken some measurements for this large circle that you see here that wraps itself all the way around the plate. Now, I took a measurement on the outer edge of it and on the inner edge of it so that I know what my imprint area is for Darren to carve. Now that I've done that, I take it to the computer. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to design for the curve using Adobe Illustrator. And I'm also going to show you how to flip your design afterwards, as the technique Darren will be using to carve this piece is called back blasting. And when you do that, if you have text, you need to make sure that it's a mirror image. And that way, when you see it from the front side up, it reads correct. I'm also going to show you a few ins and outs of how to take your photo positive and turn it into a photo negative, and a few steps like that along the way. But before we get to there, I wanted to show you a couple of things that I tend to do once I have my design made, to double check that when we print the design on our photo positive and then we expose our film, that our film comes out the right size. And one of those things is that I print my design out and I like to cut it out, and I will often tape it to the item. You're just going to get a good idea of the space that the design is going to take up. And that's a great way that's also fairly inexpensive to test your design before you blast into your item. I'm going to take you to the computer I'm going to show you all these tips and tricks. And then after that, Darren's going to be kind enough to bring my design to reality and make it as beautiful as we can make it so that we can enjoy these items for years to come for holiday celebrations or, in case you just want some cake. So stay tuned, and I hope you learn some from all of our tips and tricks. If you have any questions afterwards, be sure to leave a comment down below our video here, and we'll definitely get back to you as soon as we can and help you with the question that you have. If you love watching this show, you want to see some more, be sure to watch our full playlist of Wisdom Wednesday. It's also just up on the channel. And for any upcoming Wisdom Wednesday videos, be sure to subscribe by clicking the bell below our video. Well, we're back again, and as you can see, we're now in the office, and I can take you to the computer to show you some design tips and tricks for how best to design for your carve. If you can see my screen here, you see that I have a document set up as an 11 by 17. You can tell that from my artboard here. An 11 by 17. And I've done that because that's how big a piece of AccuBlack material the printer that we have can't print. Some of you may have to set up your artboard to be an 8.5 by 11, but generally I find if I set it up for as large a piece of film as I can run, it's helpful, and I can lay everything out at the end and just be ready to print. And I have two circles here drawn, and they are in red. These are guidelines for myself. Remember when we talked about for the pie plate, we needed to measure that outer circle and the inner circle. Now, these are my circles drawn from those measurements. I can click on one, and if I click up here on the transform button, it'll tell me exactly how big this circle is. In width and height, it is a 9.75 inch circle. So the space in between that I have is my imprint area on the cake plate. And now I'm going to show you how to design some text to type on a curve. I have this set up, and I do want to put at least 3 words in here. I need to draw some circles first so that I have a circle to type on. Now, this circle doesn't matter what color it is because we're going to use the type on a path tool, which can be found in your toolbar. Under type, if you hold down, you have type. We want to type on the outer edge, so we're clicking on the type on path tool and click anywhere in your circle. And if you notice, it gives me some filler text. You want to make it as however big you wanted it. That way you can see it here. In this case, grateful was one of our words. So I'm going to go ahead and just type that in. At this time, you want to make any font selections, names, however you want it to look. You want to go ahead and pick that and get it about the right size that you want. I'm less worried about the positioning on the circle at this point than I am at making sure my sizing and everything is correct. And in that case, though, I'm going to go up here to my type menu. I'm going to go down to type on path, and I'm going to change my options here just a little bit because I don't want it on the top or the bottom of the line. I want it right on the center of the line so that it fills my space where it's supposed to be. So instead of choosing baseline, align to path, I'm going to choose center. And if you notice, if I click on my preview, it runs our design straight through
the center line of that shape. Now you can change the effects, how it lines up the word on the path, if you notice. I find usually rainbow or gravity are pretty good for what I need. You can also use this options box to flip the text, which, since we're doing a backblast, we're going to want to do that eventually. You can either do that now while you're designing, or once you have your design set, you can convert everything to outlines and expand the appearance of the objects. And when you do that, you can tell it to fill in the lines, and that way it's all a vector object at that point. And then you can take the whole image together and use the transform key to go ahead and reflect the image, which, if you noticed, you can flip it and it'll also flip your image for you. So those are two ways that you can get your text to flip and your image to flip in preparation to backblast an object. Most things you don't have to have a mirror image of, but it is helpful to know how to do those. I should probably tell you how to adjust where your text falls on your circle. If you notice, there are these little lines here and here. This center line, if you move it up or down, it'll flip exactly where your text is on the line. And so that's what that's about. These little ones here, though, are exactly where the text is going to fall on the path that you're designing on. If I put them on the center marks and then center my text there will be absolutely centered on that path. And at this point, you're going to want to play with your font, make sure it looks exactly the way you want it, and it's all nice and pretty. But since I've already done that part, we're just going to go ahead and place those where they need to go here. Now, an important thing to note, when designing for your carve, you want to make sure that the color that you use is all 100% K, so that when it prints, it only uses the black ink and prints on your black channel. The only reason I have these two guidelines in red is so that I remember to remove them at the end of everything. They're simply there to help me know what my space looks like. And so I have the text all designed here. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull in my wheat design and move it around to where I want it. And at this point, you're really going to want to be able to get the curve correct with the wheat, and hopefully the image that you've chosen sort of fits your path that you already have figured out. I went to Deposit Photos to pick some stock photography and vector images. There are a lot of different sites out there that you can use. There are even non-subscription based ones, such as Pixabay and Facteezy. However you want to use it, I find that if you find vector images, they work the best for designing for your carve to actually make sure that your finished product comes out with crisp, clear lines and looks nice. As you can see, this is the image that I picked from Deposit Photo. And it doesn't really look a whole heck of a lot like my finished product. And that's because I chose not to use a lot of this part. I just chose the individual pieces here that are showing the wheat. And since it's a vector image, it's built out of a lot of smaller images that each have points. And so I picked a smaller part of the pattern to use so that I could adjust it for my curve. Now, when doing this with the design work, you don't have to necessarily have it perfect on your design thing. The great thing about our photoresist films is that once you have the carrier off, they're flexible. And so as Darren showed you in the episode where he made our crystal decanter and stretched the fish around the upper stopper, they had been on a straight path. You can manipulate the film to a degree to make sure that the object you're carving is exactly how you want it before you blast it. It's definitely helpful, however, to get the artwork set as close as you can before that happens. And as I mentioned, I had chosen the smaller bits, and then I went ahead and placed it in my design. I changed the color. I made certain the color was 100% K for my black so that when we print it, it prints out correctly. And then I resized things. I'm currently grabbing the top edge, holding shift and reducing the size of this image. You can rotate it just by hovering at the corners, and then you can continue to move them along the path. You can do this manually just by doing a copy and paste and kind of manipulating them as you see fit. Or you can use the transform tool, which I'm finding it here in my upper menu. Your menus might be set up a little different if you go to Object, Transform, and you have some options with this tool. You can move it, and when you do that, you can actually make a copy of it. And so you can tell it exactly how far away you want to move it, if you want to angle it each time. You can go ahead and manipulate it that way. And it's not where I want it, but if I say OK here, you can do a Control D, which is duplicate, and it'll keep moving it in that same direction every time. And so it repeats your transform. So that's helpful if you wanted to do it that way. I picked a longer portion of the stream myself and just manually manipulated them to work where I needed them and along my curve. And then of course, if you group them so that they all stay together in one group, you can then use your alignment tools and align that group directly into the center. And then you end up with a design that looks like this. And I take my guidelines out, and it's nice and round. And then our last step, we would group everything. Group, go to transform, reflect, and tell it vertical, which will then change. I'll give you a mirrored image of the design, which then will be ready to be printed and backblasted into your piece. Now, as you noticed, you can't fit two of these on the sheet, and there's a whole lot of empty room between everything, and that's not good when printing things. So I'm going to first convert my type to outlines. This way it is now a vector image rather than a live type thing. And so now it's points, everything's outlined, nothing's going to change. No matter what printer I print it from, it's always going to look the same. The font's never going to default based on whatever computer you go to. Downside is you can't change the font after that. I like to save a copy off of the artboard until I'm ready to print, and when I save my print ready PDF, I clear off all my extra stuff around the artboard, as you can see over here, and then I save it as the PDF. My point though here is we have a lot of space on the film that we're not utilizing and isn't very economical for how you would print things. And so now that we have everything the way we want it, it's all about the right size for where we're going to do. I'm going to ungroup everything. And we're going to keep the pieces the way they line up. We're not going to do anything more to that. However, I am going to move things around so that we can print these things in an array. And then we're going to cut these things out with our film later and piece it together on our object. And then at that point, if we need to use the rainbow method or buckling with the film to get our art to align exactly the way we want it, or if we need to stretch things a little bit and mess with stuff, we can. But as you can see, my words all have a nice curve to them. They're all still backwards. I'm just kind of creating a nice little puzzle here for Darren to put together on the piece. But as you've noticed, it saved a lot of space on my film. And so I'm not using as much film to get the pieces that I need for this carve. Once this is all said and done, you're going to want to make certain everything is saved. If you were using our rapid mask film, you're going to want to make sure you change this from a photo positive, where our background is white and our images are black, to a photo negative. And to do that, you're going to want to make sure everything that was black is now changed to white. And generally, we draw just a black background here. And this is where we are going to want to make sure this part is 100% K. You can use your eyedropper tool to check that, and then double check the swatch and it'll tell you. You can use your swatches over here to double click on what you clicked on, and it's all going to open up your color picker and tell you exactly what it is. At this point, we're going to use our arrange button, and we're going to send that to the back. And now, assuming all my pieces are in the black here, it's currently a photo negative. Now everything that's white will be the part that is blasted. The only photoresist film that we have currently that uses this process and needs to be a photo negative is the rapid mask film, which, as Darren's explained in many other episodes, the benefit of is you don't have dry time because there is no washout time with that film. And so it does use more ink during this process on the design side, and there are some special things you have to do to it. But as a film, it definitely saves a lot of time, and you don't have to have a dedicated sink for anything. And now that we have gone through that process and setting everything up for our nice little puzzle here, I would then go ahead and save this. When you are blasting many objects, you want to use your space as economically as possible. And so a lot of the time you will have multiples of an image. And let me see. When you do that, it's called an array. And you're going to want to set, I'm just going to go ahead and use a square for an example, but assume that was an image. You set this one out. You can use your transform tool and tell it to move and tell it exactly, say I want it to move 2 inches horizontally, none vertically. My square is bigger than that. Let's go with 4 inches. And give them some space in between each other. Tell it to copy, and then you can duplicate that for as many times as you need out on the board. And then I would go ahead and select them all and go back to transform and move. We want to copy it. Let me see. We're now moving this vertically. And they're going to have the same amount of space in between. And then duplicate. If you notice, I'm off this page at this point. So that's when you can move things around if you give yourself a little too much extra space in between. But this means you'll have multiple of the design in case any edges of the film get wrinkled in the washout process, or for any reason you have any difficulty or they sit out for a long time and the edges get damaged as things get moved around. This way you have multiple out, and then you can cut them out and use them on many pieces and get a production run going. And so arrays are a really great time saver for large jobs and anything that you want to do a whole lot of. If you have any questions about the design side, go ahead and leave them in the comments at the bottom of our video. Without further ado, we're going to move along to our carving portion of the show this time around. And we're going to set Darren loose with our designs and see how he can improve my computer designs and make it a reality on an actual piece. I can't say that is always a joy working with the technician, being a designer, because you get to see your images become something tangible. And a lot of the time, the technician has some really neat tips and tricks and things that they might do, such as with this crystal cup, where Darren took my design of the fish, and rather than having a fish floating in space, he gave it a little murky water texturing and a good stage and deep carve, which gives it some depth and really made it come to life. Another good example of one of the designs that I had worked up that Darren improved is if you watch our pumpkin patch episode. He did a large mason jar, and he gave the pumpkins that I designed in the field a really nice foggy day to set some mood and atmosphere. And so those are some great examples of how the designer working with your technician can come up with a really unique, beautiful piece.
All right, so Laura did a great job with creating the artwork for these pieces right in front of me today. The next step in the process is printing the artwork onto AccuBlack inkjet material, like you see here. So we went ahead and exposed the film, developed with our washout unit over there, and this was the R3 self-adhesive film once again. You'll see the detail capability in those little wheat designs on there. Points, any small detail, islands, all that retains with R3. So here's the fun part. We're going to put this design right here onto 2 items. So I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, kind of a neat thing. You're utilizing space, because here on the plate, I'm going to do the back. So I'm going to do the outside rim on the back of the item. We call that backblasting or second surface sandblasting. So just the outer rim, okay, not the inside. So I'm going to basically use this as a sticker. Cut it off with my fingernail or a blade, and then peel it and stick it on here. So you're utilizing space, real estate space. You're utilizing that stencil, your time, your money, and that resist. The other I'm going to do is a vase. Some more wheat designs that Laura came up with. We're going to throw them on here in a variety of different spots, like I did on a few other items in the past. Just being creative with putting it in certain areas that I feel is going to be a good spot. So I'm going to do that. And then last but not least is the picture frame. I'm actually going to put the design on the back of the glass insert, and that's my design for that one. So all R3 material, because it's all light etching and detail work, and so 3 mil is what I recommend. So without further ado, we'll get to it. All right, so here's the picture frame glass. It's very thin. It's a 1/16 inch thick, so very light edge, but I put it on a piece of cardboard to give it more stability, and I taped it on there. And gives me more, an easier view as well. I can know when I'm carving, when I get a good edge, because I got a good white background. The other item is the vase. I threw wheat designs in a variety of different spots. I moved the film around to conform. I did a lot of my buckling technique instead of cutting, so we don't have to put a piece of tape in there. So the buckling trick is really nice on this kind of stuff. And I did the on the bottom with the extra space that we had created on the stencil for the cake platter. So it's just utilizing space and creating new designs. And last but not least was the cake platter. I'm gonna try this idea. We're going to put tape all around on the inside area. I found a bucket actually that conforms pretty nice. I'll just put my hand on it and etch, and that plastic's going to repel the abrasive. So here we go. All right, so here's a wrap on the items we did today. we did the crystal item. Bottom, nice deep carve on there with the R3 3mm. Crosno crystal item, so it looks really nice. There's a lot of area there for personalization and logos and a lot of different wrap ideas. Then we went to the cake platter. We etched through the coating on the material. Didn't take too long. It's almost like a powder coating type material. Revealed a nice colored etch in there. Very easy to do, and hopefully you like my little bucket idea to protect all this area in the stem. All right, and then we went to the vase. Went deep carved on this one as well. Okay, but when you deep carve glass and crystal in any item, you have a smooth feel, right? So you can handle it even though it's deep carved. Now, if you want to add more color, make the wheat leaves gold or silver or whatever, use rub and buff. Just take your rub and buff, wipe it in there, buff it off with a terry cloth, and you have color there for a lifetime. I like to leave it natural because you always add color later, all right? And of course, left areas there for personalization, like a date or a person's name on there. So that's a good item to offer. And then finally, the picture frame. This one's glass. You could also have done a mirror tile or another type of material. Even acrylic would have worked good in that frame here. I etched the back of it so the front area is smooth and it's easy to clean. The other thing that this transitions to is different types of glass. You'll see like tempered glass, safety laminated glass. You have all types of different grades of anneal glass. Now, with sandblasting, since it's a low frictional heat, you can sandblast each of those items without creating like a spider or honeycomb effect. Now, one that I did here was I blasted at 20 psi, and I went over the design once. If you do tempered glass or safety laminated glass, that's the key to success. Blast at a lower psi, so there's low frictional heat on that piece. Carbide abrasive's going to etch it regardless, so no reason to carve any higher than 20 psi. Any other questions on these products or more from Iconics Imaging? Look forward to working with you once again on the next episode of Wisdom Wednesday. Until then, have a blast and blast with confidence.
Hello everyone. We just want to take a moment and say thank you for your business. We know it's been a tough year for everyone, and from the bottom of our hearts, we really thank you. We hope you have a great holiday season, a great Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving to you, your family, your work family, your personal family. Look forward to a good and great, prosperous 2021 year, and it was great working with all of you in 2020. So looking forward to seeing all of you once again down the road.
Absolutely. And enjoy some turkey, right, Darren?
Gobble, gobble.